Scott.
Scott.
Oh, wow, that's so nice of you.
I'm going to give you this squeaky one.
It's a broken chair. And it collapsed.
All right, cool. Everyone's here. Thanks for joining triPOS Sprint 1.3 review. The team, what our goals were this week was, this sprint was to complete the tip option functionality, complete the yes and no area, do a regression cycle, prepare for our next release 5.6, and a few spikes to help us with our next, basically our next release, our package that we're going to send out. In the middle of the sprint, 5.6, Agilysys said, hey, we can hold off, let's wait another sprint for what we wanted to deliver in 5.6. So we adjusted, we pivoted, adjusted, took some stuff out for 5.6, took the release regression cycle out of the sprint, brought in some other stuff to wrap up, and then we'll take on 5.6 regression release readiness this upcoming sprint, 1.4. So we committed to 44 points. 8 points of that was for the regression cycle. Took that out, we brought 8 other points in, and we got that completed as well. So that reflects on the stories that we just, Katie just came through. So this is what we committed to. So this is the additional stuff that we brought in. And then the slide before that was the stuff that we committed to, and it reflects the release readiness triPOS story. Any questions? Cool. The team's going to go ahead and start demoing.
All right, so this first story is adding some tip options per request, and so Matoki is going to actually do a live demo of this one.
This feature allows you to override your tip section of selecting, setting in triPOS config. Like even if you are setting 15%, 20%, 20% in triPOS config, setting 10, 20, 30 for each request. So adding tip option selection in configuration section to allow you to override the value like 10, 20, 30%.
We changed it 30% tips.
He's so innovative. He put the whole camera next to it, the whole thing. Where is this coming?
It's a movie studio, yeah.
Yeah.
Production budget's low, so.
These movies always make it good, you know?
It's not union. It's not union.
Separate to not to use tip option, delete the entire values of tip option selection, then it will not allow impact to select. Like this. When you want to use config value directly, delete the entire tip option selection, tip option section from configuration section. Then you can use config value directly. 15%, 20%, 20%.
Yeah, so the original functionality, right, and then also gives you the override to put none or something different.
Yep. Yep. It is not a request.
Yeah.
That's it.
What does the shipment mean?
It's compiled shipping. You exceeded the expectation by doing the demo.
All right, this next story was a bug that was found within the sprint for the actual tip per request story, and I'll hand it back over to Matoki to talk about that one as well.
I'm going to steal this.
Oh yeah, Becky, sorry. Becky.
So if tip options are null or missing from both the request and within the triPOS config, we should be producing an error, a 400 response, and an error indicating what's missing. Instead, what was occurring was a 200 okay, and oh hey, here's a random message, you should include this. So this bug was to fix that behavior.
Okay. Next. This one is bug.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so this one is going to be a video demo, and this is a bug that was found a few sprints back where we were having some issues with these semi-custom screens that we have in triPOS. So you can send down a semi-custom screen, and then the screen stays on the pin pad to allow the ISV to chain multiple screens together without some weird behavior in between. So what we were noticing is that when the screen timed out and you still selected something on the pin pad, it caused the pin pad to be in such a state where we couldn't send a subsequent request down to it. So Matoki fixed this one as well and is going to show you through this video. Top one. Top video, oh, not that one. Thanks.
What happened was, if you send request to yes/no section, you can select, but if you leave it long file like 1 minute, I skipped video, so now it's timed out. So pinpad returns timeout exception. It's okay, but after that, still you can select from pinpad like this. Then that case, if you send next one, next request, pinpad returns another exception, which is pinpad exception, just something wrong happened each thing. And it's not only yes/no selection, like if this timer exception happen. After that, if you send like just the idle request, still always pinpad exception returns. And not only yes/no selection, multi-selection section, also like this time 1, 2, 3 selection. Also, when it timeout, timeout exception returns, still you can select multi-selection on pinpad. After that, always pinpad exception returns. And not only Verifone MX, ISC 250 of Ingenico, so you can select multi-selection on ISC MSC 250, but still you can select. After that, if you send next request, it returns pinpad exception. So I fixed it. So how I fixed was, which is sending yes/no selection. When it timeout, returning timeout exception is, of course, it's okay. That time I suppressed to select pinpad. We can't select anything. So now, if you send like idle selection, idle request, it returns 200 OK. Or if you time out again, after that, you can send selection request like yes/no selection again. It allows to like return zero-based numbering. So that time it was yes no. So second one selected, so return one. Multi-selection also returns time out exception normally, but already you can't select next one. So if you send next request, multi-selection, it returns zero-based numbering, so it returns 1, 0, 1, 2, 1. In Jericho ISD 250 also, if it's timeout, you can't suppressed selection, just returning timeout exception. So if you send next request, it returns zero-based numbering. That's it.
Cool.
Excellent.
So there is one bug currently in RBA for the ISC 250 on the semi-custom screen where it always displays input accepted after you select something. And so right now it's a known issue documented in our release notes that for the ISC 250, when you're creating your own custom flow, it will display input accepted in between your screens. And we can't do anything about that until until Ingenico is able to fix that in RBA 17 or produces RBA. All right.
Next one is check the spike, which is cleaning up requests having configuration section, because now there are so many requests having overriding config values, but each request, each logic's doing each way to override, so cleaning up is kind of necessary to do, but we decided not to do it now, because now Cloud is doing request things. So we decided to wait to finish certain request value decided.
For this sprint, we added some testbed cleanup, and that effort involved cleaning out some duplicated tests, combining tests where the bulk of the steps were the same, appending them together, or concatenating those together, fixing naming so things didn't appear to be similar when they were actually different, setting up shared steps so it's one-stop shopping for updating tests, similar to having a helper in code, or any method really. If you update something, it updates everywhere else. Reviewing the tags and the way things were organized. We did an initial pass to identify automation candidates, and then back to tags, organization, and then we set up to be able to run the integration test every time new code is delivered to us in a manual fashion until we can look into the VM situation further. This is an ongoing effort. The next step is to continue the test case review, meaning go through each of the tests to make sure that they're still valid and current. A lot of these are a couple years old. So we're going to go through a regression test cycle in Sprint 1.4, and that's where we intend to hit those. And as we go through those, we'll continue the duplication and combination effort and identifying additional automation candidates.
And yeah, there was a lot of test cases in there that were old for older versions. So
yeah,
that's the ones that we really tried to focus on and fix. But if there's older versions out there, then we should kind of keep the older test cases.
Just archive them, right? In like a
exactly. Yeah. So the ultimate goal of this particular effort is to make it clear what testing needs to occur should we ever need help from anybody outside of QA, as well as what all is ready and queued up to be automated, and the future of the manual effort migrating over to automation.
Yeah, and then hopefully our regression, the time it takes for us to regression test a release will shrink too, and so that'll be a really big win for us.
Yes.
So as good as Balaji is here, we can put in a request for robots. So That's weak out of the budget, right?
Robots?
Yeah, robots. This is for the swipe the card.
Yeah, they got drones, man.
Yeah.
I'll be the robot.
I know you can see the robot, but.
But do we have simulators to go into the pin pads themselves?
That's something we looked at. We never got a chance to finish looking into that, but I think there are some tools out there to like program the cards and have them while they're inserted they can change and stuff like that. I think, but we don't have anything like that right now.
Okay.
Something to look into for sure.
So today, I mean, for the pin pad testing, though, you need to somebody has to put the card in.
Actually,
correct. And we do have some automated test possibility with like simulating the pin pad, but then you're not going to get true end-to-end automation, but you at least get some validation.
I mean, for development, you need simulation of the pin pad so that you're not physically using it. But then once that, then you need that piece of it.
Yeah.
So this item is a bug that was found during last sprint where we weren't mapping over. Absolutely.
For fun.
Yeah.
And yesterday I asked him,
Go master, yeah. This is review.
So if you go to the previous slide, it's set up to run the integration test every time a new code is delivered to QA.
Mm-hmm.
Is that automated or?
No, that's manually.
That's manual.
So
I wasn't sure code is being delivered manually or QA's integration test is being run manually. So I wasn't clear.
Yes.
So we have
That's for both.
a set of automated integration tests, and so our goal is to every time a build is kicked off and every time we produce an artifact that we spin up a VM, install triPOS, and run them.
Yeah.
But right now we just have to run the automated ones manually.
So that's a continuous integration.
It's automated, but someone has to push the button to go do it. We actually had it built up to where, as Katie mentioned, everything spins out of the virtual machine. Some things happen to our lab that we have to kind of rebuild that and get the agents and stuff reinstalled.
Are we using like Chef and Puppet to spin up the?
It's the Microsoft version though. They have like the lab manager. They call it. It has agents and stuff like that. It's pretty similar.
So what do you guys need over there now? You need a VM?
Yeah, it's virtualization is a part of it, so where it kicks off.
Somebody going to help you guys?
Yeah. No, we already got Aaron.
Okay.
I think or Mark or one.
Mark's already got 2 VMs for us.
Yeah, Mark.
We started to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So this was a bug that was identified last sprint with the header credentials per request feature. So right now, when you have a transaction, we return merchant ID from the acceptor ID within the triPOS config. I don't know why. Does anybody know why? Okay, well it maps. So if you do a request, it pulls from the config. What was found during testing was if you sent in header credentials in the request itself, it would continue to pull from the config, which is an invalid representation of the credentials that are being used. So this bug updated the code to pull the merchant ID based on actually using.
So this was a bug that was found several sprints back on the yes/no input and on the yes/no endpoint. So if you send an empty header or a subheader, triPOS throws an exception and returns a 500 HTTP status code. Can you play the video? So here is the behavior before the fix. So send an empty header. triPOS returns an exception. And then here's another scenario with an empty subheader. And then succeeding requests actually reinitializes the pin pad. So like the former exception kind of put the pin pad in a bad state such that the succeeding request needs to reinitialize it. So this is after the fix. So send an empty header, and then the empty header is displayed on the pin pad, and then just click X or no, yes, and then we return a 200 OK. So the fix here was actually instead of sending a replace text command with a null text to the pin pad, triPOS right now just eliminates the new replace text command if there's like no text to send to the pin pad.
Just some context, so it looks like we're fixing a lot of bugs, which we are, but it's much needed bugs because the Genesis has their request, and a lot of the bugs that we're fixing will suffice their request that they're asking for the department.
And a lot of the things, just for Joseph, wanted to have more of that customization to drive things on a per request basis versus having things in the config. So that was kind of a big theme, I think, right, Katie? SM?
Bugs are okay as long as they're found here than outside. That means the QA is doing a good job of finding them.
All right.
So this was another bug that was found during Linux testing, or actually it was found in the field too, right?
It was noticed, yeah.
Yeah. So triPOS continually attempts to connect to an IP pin pad, like forever, like infinitely. And so we log warnings when we try to connect to the pin pad, and so the log just grows. Like for after 3 hours, you would notice that the log grew to like several hundred MBs. So we can play the demo here to show the behavior. So this is before the fix. I have an IP pin pad connected, but it's turned off. So triPOS will try to connect to the pin pad several times, and we can see that through the log here in a bit. So triPOS is starting, and then this is the log. I kind of fast forwarded this video. So you can see there that so there's an exception, IP connection not established, and then you can see several warnings right after it, like 5 warnings, and then it just goes on and on until you stop triPOS basically. And so we fixed that so that connection attempts is limited to 2. So let's start triPOS, and then connect to the pin pad that's turned off. Exception was thrown, and you can see that there's no warnings logged after that because it just stopped trying to connect. And then connection attempt is going to be made on the next request to that same lane that didn't exist earlier. So, and this time around, I turned on the pin pad, and then I'm going to send a request, and then this time it was able to connect, and so it configures the pin pad.
Perfect.
That's it.
And Balaji, on the Windows one, this has been working well. It's just we created the Linux, now triPOS running on Linux. This is our first product out with Linux. But I believe this wasn't working as the Windows one because we use mono and another layer, and it was handled different. So,
so when we say Windows, are you referring to the triPOS aspect or where the ISV application is running?
both.
It runs on, yeah, so triPOS actually runs on Linux as well. So that's, you know.
So in this case, when ISV is running a Linux-based software where you have to run triPOS,
on
you have packaged it with mono, so it can run on the Linux OS, and that's where this one is related to.
Yeah.
But when you have a ISV that is running a Windows-based OS and also everything is fine.
With triPOS,
No,
Windows.
actually, let me correct that. So the bug was apparent in Linux because mono logs a lot of details, but it's also actually occurs in Windows
In
too.
Windows also?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just didn't have the, okay.
Well, we
It's
didn't have
ironic
the
that
600 megabytes.
you are using mono layer
Okay.
to Windows, and it does more logging than the native Windows itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just the nature, I guess, exposes the problem. And,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
underlying challenge would have been there either way.
So we're going to fix it on Windows as well then.
So
Yeah,
then
the
it
fix
got
was
fixed on
in
both.
both.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, it's still one code base.
Yeah, it's one code base. Yeah, you're wrapping it for mono.
So this was a research spike on the pin pads so that we can design the input endpoint. So what we found out was we already have input forms existing right now, so we don't need to create new ones. And then by looking at the 3 devices or the 3 kind of devices that we support, Some of them have predefined set of prompts, and some accept like a free-form format. So the design that we came up with to control the input and for security is to provide a list of prompts to the ISVs so that they can just use a set of prompts. They can just like send a answer pin prompt. And so with that list of prompts, we can map that to the several devices list. And also we can have the ISVs customize the format of these prompts by sending a format ID. And then so you can see below that's going to be the input endpoint format that we would be accepting.
So this was a research spike on trying to implement store and forward for EMV transactions. Basically, the process that was defined after I had a talk with Chance was that during GenAC 1, we basically need to get an ARQC, which is basically a request to go online. And once that is received, then we're able to request an AAC, which is during the GenAC 2 process, which basically is telling the card that we can't actually go online. And then once that is actually done, we basically discard any of the tags that we received from GenAC 2, and we store the transaction data that we received during GenAC 1 and all those tags. One of the issues that Chance did say that could be a problem is that he believes everything should be okay and easy to implement for the MX and VX pin pads for Verifone. But in Genico, he wasn't really sure how to actually send an AAC during GenAC 2 to it. So we actually sent an email to John at Ingenico. We're waiting back on a response for that still. There is the possibility that we may end up having to figure out how to do this ourselves if we don't get a response back in the time that we need. So.
And update on that. Leandro sent an email to them yesterday at some point, and yesterday and this morning, I think he answered the questions that we need.
Okay.
We just got replies back. I haven't read through them, so I don't know if they're exactly what we need or if he needs more information, but we at least got a response.
So you're saying there's a chance.
1 in a million.
No, it's interesting. Store forward EMV was always a question. It sounds like there's a way to do it, and that's what we're looking at. So.
Mm-hmm.
So this was another research spike that I had in basically looking into our build process. Over the past, I think, month or so, wherever our build process time had actually spiked, it was originally somewhere around 9 to 10 minutes, and then somehow ended up at 40 minutes per build, which was getting kind of excessive. So I did some research into trying to determine what was causing the issue. One of the obvious things was we actually had a 59% increase in the number of unit tests. Not really anything we can do about that, but that is one of the reasons why our performance kind of started to slow down on those machines. The other thing was that the resources on the build server were actually being stretched a little thin. During the research spike, Aaron actually went in and created another VM just for triPOS, and he's got 4 agents running on there for us. And that actually dropped the build time down to what we were originally running at. So that gave us a significant increase in performance. But during the other research that I did, I actually found there was a couple other ways that we can hopefully get the build process down to be even faster, because once we get the integration tests to be automated through the build process, we're going to want to have those extra time savings. So one of the things is that the build process currently is split into 2 different configurations. There's a possibility this may take a little bit of work, and I didn't really want to. Wouldn't be our first choice or as far as trying to increase the speed of it, because it might cause some changes that can have unanticipated changes to the build process. But basically, we have 2 configurations that run right now. One is for the release, and others for the release service installer. And one of them actually builds I can never say this word, obfuscates the libraries. And packages them and packages everything in the SDK and the installer and stuff. And then the other one actually builds it under a release configuration and also runs all the unit tests. I looked at some ways that we can possibly bring those together, but I don't know exactly how smooth that transition and actually go until we started actually doing it. But one of the other ways that is much more promising and would be an easier fix was I noticed there's a lot of disk I/O going on with our unit tests right now. There was actually, I think, 1,300 calls to read the triPOS config from disk. So by refactoring our unit tests, we can actually avoid reading from disk at all and writing, because there was a little bit of writing done too, which should hopefully, during my rudimentary testing on my local machine, I saved a minute on the unit test execution. So on our build server, whatever, we should at least see that change too.
It's interesting too, because I know that there's been complaints that we use shared storage for these VMs, and it's been at least ongoing complaint of a dev team, right, that it's shared and that we don't know what we're going to get with the I/O, and it might validate why when they're looking at I/O acting up speeds, then all of a sudden our builds take longer, and hence the unit test, hence using the file system, which would kind of explain a lot.
Yeah, we should typically try to avoid any disk I/O during our unit testing, if possible. There are certain cases where you can't always avoid it, but if we can abstract things away enough to be able to do that, then that's our best case. So with that, however, we have achieved, back our, old build process times, and I have confidence that we should be able to get actually some better performance out of it in the future by refactoring the unit tests.
I know, on the note of abstracting out the file, I know there was a thing called, I think it's called moles. I don't know if it's still called that or not. If you ever ring a bell to anybody, it's basically Microsoft's framework for mocking, and they have what they call shims and stubs, and there's a shim or stub for file system mocking out. So something to look into.
The config files, instead of reading all the time, is it better to put it in memory?
There's some level of caching we do all the time, but I think right now it's our persistent mechanism. So whenever you change it, you're going to have to write it out. Yeah. And then, but one of the things we're looking into in the future is having some sort of lightweight database, right, or something like that.
But even with the config, and this is even going back a few years ago, if you make some parts of the changes, it can dynamically pick it up. The config, especially the .NET Framework one, it monitors them, picks it up. So it doesn't have to be like persistent. Even if it's in memory, right, it can still pick it up automatically.
Okay, so I was tasked with checking out how many simultaneous lanes we could go up to. Did we include a graph?
Yes.
Yeah. So the things that are interesting to note about there, if you see the green line that goes along the bottom, that's the tests per second, which averages out to about 13, a little over 13, and that seems to be the rate limiting thing, because as you add more and more lanes to the test, if that test per second stays the same, then what we end up doing is what you see here. The per test time increases until it hits our timeout of 30 seconds. No tests can go longer than 30 seconds, so you start having lots and lots of errors as they start timing out. Now, as to the source of that 13 tests per second, I have no idea what that is. Brian and I talked about it a little bit. He has some thoughts, but to really figure it out, we have to take the next step and start doing performance monitoring, figuring out where that comes from.
So 13 tests per second, are we adding another 13 tests every second?
No, so you can see what's going on there. The purple line is the number of test users, which is essentially they each get their own lane in this test. And so it starts at 50 and it goes an additional 50 every, I think it was every 30 seconds for that. So you can see that goes all the way up to where it gets to 550 users. And at that point, it's useless to continue testing because you just get massive errors at that point. So that's our limit.
So if you send 200 simultaneous requests to triPOS, triPOS is only processing
13 at a time. Yep.
It's kind of how you can think of it. It's not exactly what's happening, but there could. I mean, we were talking about
options. I mean, it could be go back to this disk-IO thing, file locking, or it could be related to Express. We could be waiting on Express. It could be a certain notation. So with but we can figure out what it is. But I think it would be highly beneficial to understand.
Yeah. So if we were, do we feel like there's a, based on the data, there's a rough kind of recommendation of what our lane capacity is today?
No, because if there's a limitation on Express, then I don't think that's reflective because you're not going to production, right?
Yeah.
But if it is a limitation in triPOS, like for the config reading, something like that, I think we could say that there is definitely a limit there.
So, but right now it is inconclusive one way or the other.
Right. All we know is that there's 13 tests per second. I mean, it could even be the CPU speed of my machine. I mean, that's the level of ignorance that we have right now. We just know there's that limit. It's going to do 13 tests every second. We can't go above that.
So this was run on your laptop? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the next step on this?
Well, we kind of have to decide if we want to do custom performance monitoring, somebody's going to actually have to go into triPOS methods and start putting in hooks so that then the load test can capture those times. Exactly.
So either in log file or some sort of WMI kind of messaging? Or?
Well, if we had performance monitoring hooks, we could actually then plot it out and we could see, like, I would think you'd be able to graphically see where the wait is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully.
Yeah. So that's the next.
So yeah, the other thing I've been working on is...
Hey, quick question.
Sure thing.
When you ran the test one on your laptop, did you get a snapshot of just performance metrics of your laptop before and after when you were running this, just to see how your laptop itself was consuming the resources?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it. There was nothing that really said I'm maxing out the CPU or the memory usage or any of that
So
stuff.
it's, so it's not necessarily the machine at this point in time, but it's also now once you do the WMI piece of it, you can look how the current process that you're running is consuming it and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, so as a part of the test bed cleanup stuff, Becky has been marking items in MTM as automatable or not, and so I've been going through them and either attaching them to existing integration tests or modifying the integration tests to make them match the requirements of the MTM stuff. She got it up to around 500. I was going through and found a bunch that can't be automated because we don't have the ability to look at Express directly.
I think I found a way around that.
Say again?
I think I found a way around that.
Really? Okay. So, I mean, Paul was suggesting that if we wanted to really do some integration tests where we're looking at Express, raw Express stuff, we would probably have to stand up some kind of a web server and pull back Express stuff and then validate. But that's a little bit more involved than we want to get right now. So,
what kind of Express stuff are you looking for Express?
Well, so there's some raw information that Express doesn't return to triPOS. That in order to look at it, the tester in the test cases themselves, it says go look at the dashboard and validate that this information is there. So that information doesn't get returned back to triPOS.
Or in the reporting API?
Right. So there currently isn't a way for me to say, okay, this was the request that I wanted, and this is what Express is telling me it got back. That'd be very useful.
You could do a transaction query.
That's
Transaction query, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I started to look at yesterday.
But it wouldn't be through triPOS because triPOS doesn't expose a query method yet. You
Yeah.
have to go direct to Express.
Yeah.
But you could
So there you go.
Yeah, so I started that yesterday.
Use that API. I mean, you can go direct to the database. You could do Selenium on dashboard, maybe. I don't know.
Please no. Please no. Please no.
Like your last option.
Yeah. I mean, I can do it, but.
So that's actually an area of some really fruitful stuff, but we can start doing that to add hundreds of
Yeah, it was
additional
at
tests.
least 180
Yeah,
that we flagged as needing Express.
right. So we got those flagged.
That would be
Yeah,
awesome
future
because
thing.
you could validate the whole path then of what gets passed
Yeah.
and actually made it to Express in the same way too, which
Exactly.
you have some issues with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So that's definitely future possibilities. And Meanwhile, I'm just continuing to whittle away at the list that we have now. It's down around 200 now that are low-hanging fruit for automating.
Cool. But we have, what, around 250 that have either been automated since we started this effort or have, well, been mapped over to say that they've been automated.
Yeah, so there's
the number is steadily growing.
Yeah, it's getting bigger. It's nice.
Yeah.
All right, so I was able to fix 2 bugs this sprint, and one of them is one that was found in the field. And this was occurring, so basically what Jeff was noticing was that when we do a PIN debit EMV transaction and an error occurs in GenX2 after it's already been approved online, when we send the reversal to reverse the transaction that was approved online, we were not sending up the correct lane ID. And when the back-end batching or something was happening, settlement, it wasn't able to map the PIN request to the reversal because it uses the lane ID to identify it. And so the actual online transaction didn't end up getting reversed. So I just have a small video to demo it. So this is first demonstrating the actual bug. So I'm sending an EMV sale and I'm inserting an EMV debit card. Then after I confirm the amount and enter the PIN, if you remove the card during processing, then the transaction makes it to Express and gets approved, but it is declined in GenX2. So you can see in the response that we get the status code back of failed. And we also can see in the logs that we've generated the reversal that's sent to Express. So if we go into dashboard, then we can query and see the actual sale that was approved. And if we go into the trace, we can take a look at the lane ID that we send up just to verify that it's there in the actual sale. The lane number is 1. When we check the same information on the reversal, since this is the version with the bug, we'll be able to see that the lane ID is going up at 0. So I believe the transaction ID and the lane number get merged together when they do the settlement, and so it wasn't able to settle on the back end. So this is the fix, same process, insert the debit EMV card, confirm the amount, and enter the PIN. Remove during processing. And we'll see the status code has failed again, just to verify that whatever we expected actually happened. So now when we look at the reversal, after the fix was installed, we can see that we're now sending out lane number 1. So this should fix the problem settlement. So that's it for that one. And then the next bug that I fixed was actually related to mapping. And so someone noticed that when we're doing a payment account authorization, the approved amount wasn't being populated in the response. And this was just due to a missing map. And I can show you what that looks like pretty quickly here. So first we're going to just create a payment account. So we can get a payment account ID to use for the payment account auth. Save it. So we'll get the payment account ID. Use that for the authorization. And this is the one with the bug in it, I believe. So when we send the payment account authorization, we can see in the response that even though the transaction was approved, so even though we have is approved true, the approved amount is coming back at 0, which is incorrect. So after the fix, if we go through and do another payment account authorization, you can see that the approved amount is now being populated correctly. That's it. It's a pretty short one. And I believe that concludes our demo. And now, Doug, I'll hand it over to you.
I just have a video.
Okay. Do you want me to pull it up? Is it on SharePoint?
Yeah, it is. So I basically created a demo video for the latest stuff that we added to the triPOS mobile SDK.
Where is it?
It should be right in the root of where all the uploads happen. I'm not sure. Was that whatever link you sent me to?
Demo? Yeah.
And then, yeah, it should be the second from the bottom. Yeah, that one.
remember declining.
It's like slowing down downloads.
Favorite video ever. Space for SharePoint. What have you guys been using to record the demos?
Fancy stuff. Did you see all the transitions?
Not the built-in Microsoft Movie Maker thing, or?
Editing and then an editor.
Oh, okay.
Make it the editor. I bought the thing and
It's done.
transition.
Too late.
It's too late.
Alright, yeah. Head volume. Do you have
Okay.
volume on this?
It comes
I did
out of
voiceover.
the
Can you start it over?
laptop.
Sorry,
Sorry, let me start it over.
going on.
That doesn't work the last
Oh,
time I
doesn't?
tried
Okay.
it.
Hello everybody, you're going to be watching a demo of EMV refund on the triPOS mobile SDK sample app. On the left you've got the sample app, and on the right you've got a video going on of the Ingenico device that's talking to the sample app. And what you're looking at is I just pushed the refund button, so it prompts the device to kick off a refund, tells you to insert a card, approve the amount, and then remove the card. And as you can see, it went through and it was approved, and the response is sent back to the sample app. And you can see all of the information related to that transaction. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, that's the point.
Alrighty.
Janice, you on the line? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it was short and sweet.
Alrighty.
He showed you the functionality. What more do you want?
And there was a nice flashy screen too, so.
Well, why do you think I let him do the demos now?
So this is the sprint burn down. As you see, as of 5.6 is when we found out about. We pulled everything out for the release, and then the team just started pulling in more work. No deployment. This is our sprint velocity, so I think the team is starting to normalize now, and our average has been pretty much 44 for the past few sprints. So that's what we're going to use moving forward if our team stays together and intact. But the TFS reports went down, I think, from the upgrade, so it wasn't collecting a lot of the data from the triPOS. It did for Express, but not for the triPOS, which is weird. So I reached out to Aaron. Aaron's looking into it. Test report.
With the removal of the regression, there's not a whole lot to say in here. We did 29 test cases. We updated none. And then we did some smoke testing on Windows 7 with those two pin pads, and then some on Linux. Found a couple bugs. There was a lot of effort on the testbed cleanup, and that's where the bulk of our effort was focused. But we do have the full regression for next sprint plan.
Cool.
This is our PI burn down. Completed 44, and again, I said 44 is going to be our normalized points moving forward. So with 44 points being our velocity, we are on track to wrap up our PI with our commitment.
So we didn't plan for 1.6, but some stuff has already shifted, basically.
Yeah, and that might actually go out due to our merging. We'll do our merge in 1.5.
Okay.
The testing. So we, in our next step slides, we have a focus on what we're going to do from the 5.7, and then there's some stuff that pushed out for IC260 Genesis, but we just kept it in the backlog in case as a stretch, right? So,
yeah.
So the stuff in 1.5 and 1.6 is mostly stuff that would be scoped because the Genesis isn't using the ISC anymore.
Okay.
So it's there, but it's not going to be something we need to deliver.
Okay, there might be opportunity to regain that 1.6 for innovation and stuff like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So yeah, but for the most part, that's the PI burn down, and we're on track. So this is for our release 5.6. All the features that's going in. So our next steps are going to be regression for 5.6 next sprint, and then we're going to get deploy 5.6 to prod, and begin working on release 5.7. So there's the scope of features that we already have identified for 5.7, and that's what we're going to be working on 1.4, part of 1.5, and hopefully release by 1.6.
Yeah, so we're planning to actually cut the release for 5.6 pretty close to the very beginning of next sprint, so we can start regression testing it. And then in the meantime, we will be working on all the stuff for 5.7.
Any questions? Any feedback from any stakeholders on the phone?
Great job. That's nice.
Good job.
Yeah. You did all that work in 2 weeks?
And I'm done.
Wow, that's amazing. You did a great job.
Can I?
Yeah.
I like the videos. What tools are you guys